Welcome to Rage, you nerds! I'm Mr. Cack, and I'm joined by my brother, Nerd Jared, and our tall, dark, and horny TJ. We are the nerds, we're here to rage, and if you don't know already, look at me, I'm wearing my Gozer Gym shirt. We're Ghostbuster fans, and we're going to discuss the movie Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And what we're going to do, by the end of this discussion, we're going to give our thoughts, our initial reactions to watching the movie yesterday, and at the end of this, we're going to answer this one singular question after all of our diatribes, and it's this: was this a good movie? Because that's what people care about. Leading up to that point, I want to go ahead and provide this spoiler warning. Depending on your definition of a spoiler, anything that we talk about, even if we don't outright say something that might be detrimental to the plot, you might still consider that a spoiler. So if you haven't seen the movie, you should go do that. Then come back, watch our video, see if we're right. If you honestly don't care, and we're not going to try to be too spoiler heavy, but we will do some spoilers it's just going to happen. Then stick with us, listen, and then make your own decision. Go out there and watch the movie or not. Your choice. All right, boys, we watched the movie yesterday. We have some thoughts. I would like to kick the ball to TJ first. TJ, what was your initial reaction to watching Ghostbusters Frozen Empire?
Initial reaction was, holy crap, everything that I thought based on the trailer was going to happen in this movie, none of it happened. I mean, I was 100% wrong with my trailer reactions and, breakdowns and everything that we talked about watching the trailer, anticipating what could happen. None of it happened. Absolutely loved that fact that, the trailer, I could not guess the movie based on the trailer. Some trailers give everything away. The trailer did not. That's my first reaction. My second reaction is, we can now put aside the whole, is Ghostbusters 2 canon? I don't know how in depth you want me to go, but that's initial. Yeah.
Yeah. We can follow up with that. Jared, initial reaction for you. What was your thoughts?
So I'm kind of in the same boat with TJ, where not everything that I thought was going to happen, but I have to go back and watch the trailer again. Like I had in my mind how I thought the movie would progress based on the trailer, and just kind of making my own, kind of storyline. And of course, there were some things added in that I didn't get to. We knew Slimer was going to be in it, but to what regard? And to me, felt underused for the potential build up. But that's fine. But no, I think it progressed about how I thought it would, but things happened that either I thought were going to happen and didn't happen, like TJ said, or they hurried through something really that was my initial reaction. At some point in the movie, I felt like I was rushed to judgment on some things. It's like they'd throw something at you and be like, oh, okay, we're here now, Didn't really give you time to digest it.
So for me, my initial reaction, Keymaster, Gatekeeper, Firemaster, is that, so we got the horns right. We made note in our reviews of the trailer about the horns, and one of my things was I thought it would be significant whether it was originally the monster's horns or not. I didn't necessarily know, but it seemed like it was always going to be something. I feel like we were in the ballpark, but not accurate on Camille Nanjiani's character, Nadim Razmati. I feel like we were really close, and I feel like he encapsulates some of what our trailer reaction thoughts were, while also not being exactly what our trailer reactions. So I feel like we kind of had sniffed that out a bit, but we were ultimately wrong. So I'm fine with that. What TJ said is, there's a lot there from the trailer that is in the movie. We definitely nailed the fireman flashback being the start of the film. But there was honestly, a lot that we whiffed on. A lot of it that we whiffed on, where there really wasn't, those moments that we kind of thought would be staples in this. There was plenty of Ghostbuster franchise staples in this movie, even if they weren't as apparent as they have been in past movies. But we didn't get a ghost montage, and I was kind of sad about that. But, I thought for the most part, I felt good and accomplished, I called that, or I was close. But there was a lot of it that I was just like, I missed that mark. I missed that mark. And, some of the stuff wasn't in the trailer, which is what TJ said, relatively nice. I don't like when they do misleading stuff, like Paul Rudd in a red cool jacket being on top of the roof, laughing, saying, "Oh boy, we didn't get that. I'm sad. That's probably going to be a deleted scene that they're going to upcharge me for." But okay. So yeah, so we got through that, and just even further now to let people know, that is probably the most spoiler-free discussion we're going to have. So again, if you made it to this point, you've got our initial responses. We try to keep it spoiler-free. If you have to dip out now, please come back later. We'll catch you on the next one. Check that timestamp. Everyone else that's sticking with us, hop aboard. So yeah, no, I think we got some stuff right. I think we got some stuff wrong. Let's talk about some of these plot things before we get too critical with anything. TJ said Ghostbusters 2 is now officially canon. I feel like we can discuss that because it happens so early. They do the breaking news, so and so, like the recap dialogue through the news update.
Yeah,
and they discuss something that I feel like was my criticism from the first movie as to why we always got frustrated, why we didn't think Ghostbusters 2 was canon, is no one mentioned Statue of... If there ever was a time the Statue of Liberty moved, that would be what you are affixed to. That would be your legacy.
Yeah.
You are the guys that made the Statue of Liberty walk down downtown New York. So I'm glad that they finally mentioned that.
You know, even though they finally mentioned it, it did kind of feel a little forced.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't necessary. It was just kind of one of those things where it was like, you know, hey, let's just go ahead and put this to bed right now. Let's just throw this in there. Like, you know, that way people will shut up. And, you know, I mean, there's eventually a part where it's like, hey, here's some mood slime that you asked for. So, you know, and we all know, you know, from our, you know, we looked at those pictures and we saw like them using the slime shooters, you know, the slime blaster things. So we knew like that part was going to be in it, or at least, you know, that led up to Ghostbusters 2 being canon. But it officially, like with the whole Statue of Liberty thing, it's just kind of like, I mean, it was almost unnecessary, but at the same time, I'm glad they did it.
I know that was one of Jared's big things that he, every time we talked about Ghostbusters Afterlife and After the Fact, talking about some of the trailers and doing our breakdown video, Jared, you kind of was always harping on, is it or isn't it canon? And they finally decided, listen, we're listening, Jared. We're going to give you what you want. Here you go.
It's all thanks to me.
All right. So let's do... Everyone needs to do a pro and con, right? Like that. You can't just talk about the good. You can't just talk about the bad. Let's do a little balance here. Let's talk about some of the things that do you guys want to start sunny side up, or do you guys want to start with the downside first?
I can get some downs out of the way, because I think for a lot of downs there's still a lot of goods, and the goods kind of, to me, outweigh the downs.
Okay, so let's take some time. We'll start with Jared first, since he spoke up, unfortunately for him. Let's talk about some of the things that we didn't enjoy about this film.
So my first one is like I said a second ago, I felt like, honestly, the whole film from start to finish was hurried through. Like couldn't get a chance to kind of like catch your breath in between things. Like it was just bam, 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 bam. And like at certain points I want to say, well, hang on, why? You know, why that? Or why this? So it was like, I don't want to say it was ping-pongy, but like had a couple different things going on. You had Phoebe and, well, we'll just call it Phoebe's ordeal, because she's with Melody a little bit, and then she's with Podcast a little bit, and they're this teenage angst trying to figure out we still want to be Ghostbusters. And then you have Trevor and his, I'm 18, I'm gonna, like, there's a lot of stuff going on that, you know, which I get, but like, you know, there was 2 years in between movies, so it's like it's like they intentionally kind of left it up to us to kind of fill in what happened for those 2 years. I didn't like that. I thought we'd get a little bit more in the progression, not the whole let's load up from Oklahoma and go to New York, but I mean, a little bit of a backstory there that we didn't get, and that was kind of annoying. But to me, that was number one. The main thing is the movie seemed like it was bam, 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 really, really rushed, and hard to keep up with. Not hard to keep up with, but hard to, like I said, there was no downtime in between. Like, you know how you get a cool off scene, I'll call it sometimes, something really big just happens, and then it'll cut to something else that's sort of a lighthearted kind of thing. I don't feel like Ghostbusters did that. It was just like, all right, and here we are, and now you got to deal with this. But before you can chew on that for a little bit, we're going to go over here. And you're thinking, okay, change scene. I get to calm down a little bit. No. It's right back to it. Got to pay. One thing I will say is it forces you to pay attention through the entire movie.
It's true. TJ, what are some cons of your perspective on this movie?
One of the things the trailer did was focus a lot on the original cast returning,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was underwhelming for the movie. But at the same time, I think there was too much cast, too many people, and so much story going on that like not everybody, because like Ghostbusters Afterlife really focused on the kids.
Yeah.
Like, but this movie, it doesn't really focus on the kids other than Phoebe and her ordeal, as Jared was saying. Trevor just pretty much had the I'm 18 now. That was his whole story. It was, I'm 18 now. I can do, I'm a legal adult. Nobody cared. And I very much feel like, nobody cares, Finn. Nobody cares. But even like Podcast and Lucky, like their characters were really, they were highly focused on the first movie, but very minor characters in the second one.
So my cons are basically just the encapsulation of both what Jared and TJ said. I think my biggest faults with this movie, Jared, what you were basically talking about is a complaint a lot of people have had, which has to do with pacing of the film. I think I agree with that.
That's a good word.
But I think for me, it's less pacing and more structure. Kind of what TJ was saying. I don't think they had a clear focus on what they wanted to do with this film. And I think part of that is just how big the cast was. But if I was going to pick apart what I would want from this film, I'd rather we focused on the Spangler-Gruberson family and probably cut out a lot of the original Ghostbusters. I know that's sacrilegious. I know, and I never thought I'd find myself saying that. But I feel like if we would have cut down and just focused on the Spangler family, because within the Spangler family, you have the heart of what should have been this film. Phoebe trying to find her place as a young adult and where she fits in all this because she's 15. She's going through these emotions. She also just lost her grandfather that she found out about 2 years ago. And now she's still communing with the dead. Like, she has a lot of crap going on. And 15 is a time when you already have a lot of crap going on. And whether you want to go too deep into potentially how queer-coded the character relationship with Melody was, or not. I mean, they went very Disney with this, where they kind of made it coded that way, so that way you can interpret
They were very
either...
they were very ambiguous about it.
Which is perfectly fine. If you feel like, hey, it's just angsty friendship and she's just trying to find someone that relates to her, cool. If you think it's more of a relationship and she was trying to find someone that relates to her, cool. Like, either way, it works. I feel like that should have been so much bigger than what it was, but thankfully it was a highlight of what they were focusing on. But in the same regard, Gruberson trying to find his place with this family, that should have been so much bigger. His interaction with Callie, his interaction with Trevor and Phoebe, him trying to find his place with all of them should have been much bigger than what it was. I'm fine with us introducing some of the new characters. I feel like their time just took away. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the returning original Ghostbusters took away from what should have been the focus of this film. And it should have been Phoebe, and it should have been the Spangler family. They were the focus of Afterlife. I also think the fact that we did Afterlife in Oklahoma, the entirety of Afterlife, took away from this film as well. If we would have done half of Afterlife in Oklahoma to establish the Spanglers and this threat of Gozer returning in New York, we could have then transitioned back to New York. We could have met Winston. We could have met that he has this underground Ghostbusters engineering operation, and that would have shaved off 25 minutes from this film, it felt like. Because we had to spend time in the first 30 minutes reestablishing and pre-establishing all of this new stuff that should have already been out of the way. This was less of a second part of a trilogy and more of a restart for a new trilogy. And that really undercut some of the pacing of this because we had to, oh yeah, here's this. This is new. Remember him? Remember them? Like, to go from there. But I mean, yeah, just I wish they would have focused on the characters that should have been the focus. I don't think Gil Keenan And if Jason Reitman, however much he had to do with this, I understand Jason not wanting to be too tied to this because of the passing of his father, so he may have wanted it to breathe. But it definitely feels like the heart that was there for Afterlife was missing for this, and I think a lot of that has to do with potentially Jason Reitman not being as involved with this as he might have been with Afterlife.
I 100% agree. And one thing I did want to say too, real quick, you touched on something that me and TJ touched in the vehicle coming home yesterday, right after we had watched it. That was a long film. I mean, 2 hours is not a Ghostbusters film. I feel like, I feel like Kat just said, we could have wrapped up a storyline here and saved 25 minutes. That's all I was going to say. It felt really long.
And I was actually going to say it felt like also watching the movie like it was meant to be a much longer movie, like closer to maybe 3 hours, based on scenes in trailers that did not happen in the movie, based on a lot of, if they were trying to do more with the original cast and everything. It very much felt like someone said, hey, get this below 2 hours and then we'll put it out. And so they had to cut a lot of stuff, which I think is where a lot of the pacing comes at with, is a lot of stuff gets cut out that maybe would have slowed down the pacing or established certain things. But also it really did feel like they were trying to do a whole lot with Winston's organization. Like I can honestly see that being like a backdoor premise to a series that they're trying to go and get put out, because you can do a series based on this organization and be connected to the Ghostbusters universe and not have to have any of the original cast or, the new cast be really a part of it.
It honestly feels like that should have been Act 2 of Afterlife, and then Act 3 could have been the payoff with Gozer trying to return and Egon's life work leading to that. I just feel like they did a disservice setting things up for this film because of that, and cut it through it. Also, a lot of people complain that Garaka wasn't in it all that much. I would argue this. Garaka was actually more influential in this, more apparent than what Gozer was in the first film. So I don't necessarily like that argument, because you see and hear and get the influence that Garaka's having throughout the course of the mid to last part of Act 1, all throughout Act 2. But I would argue, we should have had more screen time with Garaka, but really with Gozer, we had 3 minutes of screen time with Gozer before they aimed for the flat top. It's a cool it was a cool monster, and it would have been nice to see more of it, but
yeah, Jared and I actually talked about that too a little bit in the truck coming back yesterday. It was very much like the original Ghostbusters. You have, when they finally manage to make it up all the flights of stairs, they get there and, boom, it's just so quick, everything that happens. They turn into dogs, they open the door, Flat Top comes out. Are you a god? You say yes. We're shooting her, she disappears, and then Stay Puft Marshmallow Man comes. I mean, very, very fast. Like the final boss has always been very, very fast in Ghostbusters movies. I mean, you look at the first one, you look at the second one, you look at it at, Afterlife. It's still very fast.
Now, the other side of that argument that I would say, when you have, and this is my complaint with Avengers, some of the Avengers movies, Age of Ultron specifically. But when you have such a villain that is that powerful, you really can't kind of give him much more than what you did, because I guess where I'm at is it's inevitable that he's going to get out. Maybe we should have focused a little bit more on how we're going to defeat it, but they didn't know. I mean, they did know, but they didn't know. But maybe focus a little bit more on, how we can take this guy down if he escapes. That way they're, it's a little bit more prepared. He's already out, and then Phoebe's just wow, well, it's clearly because we have to put brass in the proton packs. It's what? I mean, I get that you are held in a brass container, but now all of a sudden you're going to melt brass, coat the thing in the, I forget what I'm even talking about now, the blaster. And it's just and then it works. It's oh, well, okay. That was, because then my whole thing was what happened if it didn't work then, Phoebes? What do we got? What do you got on the back burner now? I feel like we could have that, if nothing else, that I think is where a little bit more time could have been spent, is to research on this dude. He kind of, we kind of know what we're getting into. And the way they did with the Fire Master, they kind of like, oh, you can only defeat him with this. The Ghostbusters aren't putting their ace in the hole on somebody else. They're not putting their ace in the hole on the Fire Master. They're the Ghostbuster. How can I say this? Like, I'm glad we got to see as much of Bill Murray this time as we did. I felt like the screen time was appropriate. To go back to what we said a second ago, there was just too much Dan Aykroyd in this movie. And I know that's sacrilegious to say. I agree with y'all. Let's let them figure this out as a family kind of thing. And maybe that does have to do with directing. Wish we'd had more villain time, but also more how are we going to defeat the guy kind of thing.
What do we like about this film, TJ?
I like that they were back in New York.
Yeah.
I like that, they bring back certain characters that, Walter Peck, the guy from the library, from the first, the very first movies. It's like, and they hit a lot of the iconic, spots, they did a lot of that with, the New York Public Library and stuff like that. I liked that they did that. And I liked that they really were trying to set up, it felt like they were trying to set up a franchise with this, with the, the Ghost Research Facility and doing all the new stuff.
So one of my main likes is the little throwbacks that we get, like TJ said, the art, not just the art museum, but the director, or not the library. I wish we'd have got the art museum. But yeah, like, setting up this kind of whole other Ghostbusters is not just these four guys anymore. Ghostbusters is an organization. This is a unit that can do, it's not just four entrepreneurs anymore. It's expanded into this big thing. And that's exciting too, because like TJ said, from where you can go from here, even if we don't have another movie, this gives us tons of things Ghostbusters related that we could do that don't necessarily have to be Ghostbusters, which I would still watch. Second thing that I really liked about this, everything that we got to see, like, and I guess this is a throwback. This would be considered a throwback, but I just like the time in the firehouse. Like, I feel like the first two Ghostbuster movies, because Peter's not even staying in the firehouse in the second Ghostbusters. And, you don't get a lot of time in the firehouse in the second one. The first one, you really don't get a whole lot of time in. And if you do, it's in, two main rooms, and then maybe you get to see a little bit of their living quarters upstairs. I like how this one really most of that's a set on the inside. But I like how it was redone perfectly, even to the upstairs where everything, to me, that was, so I guess it is a throwback, but like that attention to detail kind of thing. Yeah. That's really cool to me. So that was another thing that I like. And just the overall premise of the story from start to finish. Because this is one thing I will say that I did like, is no matter all the downs and ups and all, when it all gets mashed together, it still told a good story. And that's what I'm always afraid of about movies, is you can have all these things that are good, but if it doesn't tell a good story, does that make it a good movie? Or, that to me, the story, you can have terrible acting and it still be an okay movie as long as the story's good. I mean, it's not a great movie. Look at sci-fi. They've got a lot of potential, and with some good actors, but their stories are poop. So that's, to me, I'm glad it told a good story.
Yeah. So again, it feels like we're all thinking with the same brain here, because my pros are in the ballpark of what you guys are having for pros. They made the most of New York. Right? That was one of the things that I asked for in our breakdown and talking in our trailer reactions, is that my biggest hope from this film, and it's what it looked like it was going to do with the trailer, is that they made the most of their setting. We went to different places in New York, but really the big thing that I liked about how we got to see New York was we got to see different angles of the library. We got to see different locations in the library. We got to see more of the Ecto in service. Usually the Ecto, we see it take off, but we never see the drivers. We see it park, we never see the drivers. We see it outside as basically a prop, we never see them driving it. Here, within the first 15 minutes, we're in Ecto, we're seeing the baby roll, we're seeing it go through New York City. It looks and feels very much like a real Ghostbusters episode, which is what they basically said they were giving us. In the same token of that, we got more of the firehouse, which isn't what I was necessarily expecting. We got to see different rooms that either didn't exist in any of the other live-action movies or have existed to some degree in the real Ghostbusters cartoon. So they really had a chance to live and breathe. We got a chance to live and explore in the firehouse a lot more than we ever have. And I thought that was really cool, getting to see different angles and perspectives within the firehouse and how the pole connected to different locations within the firehouse that we never really got. They made a lot of real good use of the space they had in the firehouse in New York City, seeing Phoebe go out and about in town, going to local diners, hitting up little bodegas or smoke shops. Like, they did a really cute job of capturing all these different little aspects of the world that we just didn't really get with Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2, and Afterlife, because it was in Oklahoma, so who cares? I also really liked that they did more with Ghost in this. For as much as you might have complaints about how much they used Garaka or not, the fact that Ghost were actually teaming together and operating in connection is different than what we've got. It may have been implied in Ghostbusters 2 that these ghosts were popping up because of the mood slide and because of Vigo, but here we actually see Ghost doing the bidding. It might have been implied in the first Ghostbusters that these ghosts were appearing because Gozer was, imminently approaching, but we didn't really have these ghosts working in unison, and we had a lot of ghosts. We didn't get a montage, but we got the possessor ghosts, we got all these different little ghosts that had kind of personalities to them, and kind of got to play out. And that's a lot more than what we get normally from a Ghostbusters live action film. So I thought that was pretty cool. I thought the library chase scene, except for some of the hokiness behind it, I thought that was really cool because we got to see a ghost doing something, and I liked Melody. I don't know if I fully liked Melody's story, but I liked that Melody was a different kind of ghost than what we've gotten. She was human, she talked, she wasn't necessarily a villain, she wasn't necessarily good, but she existed in a realm, she existed in a different dimension. That's a plot point from them, that's, whatever, we'll go watch the movie. But she existed, and she was different than what we've gotten from Ghost before. And hey, Slimer was there, and he was the real Ghostbuster Slimer. So that's cool. He kind of was a hero in a certain regard by eating pizza. So I liked that Bill Murray didn't phone in his performance in this. I thought Bill Murray was spry and seemed pretty into this film than what I thought from watching the very first teaser trailer where it looked like he was gonna die. But yeah, I thought there was William Atherton did a really good job being dickless. I like he's a good mayor. He's a good mayor foil to the Ghostbusters.
So that was one other thing that I wanted to say, and you can put this one in the complaint department, I guess. But what I never understood, like, because until I guess unless you got on IMDb, because we were talking about this on the way, we didn't know what he was, whether he was a judge, a mayor, and then TJ was like, oh, well, IMDb says, oh, well, okay, cool. So now we know. But then I got to thinking, how did this guy working for the Southern District of New York, Environmental Protection Agency, turn around and turn into a politician, and somehow for his slimy, what does that say about New York City? They elected this guy mayor after he nearly blew their city up in 1984, and then he wants to do it again.
Have you looked at real life politics, Jared?
That's actually a very good point.
That's the most believable part of the film.
I think that's what I said yesterday. It was like when we were talking about that. I'm like, only in New York would some guy like Walter Peck go from Environmental Protection Agency and be elected as the city mayor.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I was just thinking there was another thing I really liked about this film and I forgot. Oh, I liked at the end we have a setup for if we want to do more Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Every
ghost they ever caught since 1984 is now free, and we see them spooking around town. So like, hey, you have a plethora of opportunities to do a series, to do cartoons, to do everything, because 58 cubic plasmic, whatever Ray said, is now out and about, floating around in New York City. Hey, someone's got to, who are you going to call? Someone's got to bust them.
That, and I feel like they did that on purpose. So if they don't do anything, it's one thing, but now they have a wide open door for anything.
All right, well, boys, it's time to answer the question that has been on my mind ever since I saw this film, and I've begrudgingly looked at all these articles telling me one thing. It's time to see if we agree with them. Is this a good film? TJ, was this a good movie? Oh, hold on. There you go.
Even with like all the negatives that we talked about and everything, like I still consider this to be a really good movie. It's very much Ghostbusters. Like, I think that there are things that they could have done better. I think that there are things that could have done different, but I'm not a critic. I don't get paid to sit here and trash on every single movie that ever gets made. But I think it's a good movie because it's a movie that I'm going to want to watch again and again and again.
Jared, was this
So-
a good movie?
After talking about what some of the critics said, and then after watching the movie, I can see why a lot of those critics said what they said. Having said that, hell yes, it's a good movie. Not only is it a good movie, I think it's a great movie. And you can jump on me all you want and say, well, Jared, that goes against your entire grading rubric when you do all these other grading of movies. You, okay? No, just kidding. But no, because to me, again, not only is it a story, it's all about feel too. There were times, of course, where you're like, I don't understand what's going on. What does brass have to do with anything?
No.
But it felt good. All of it still felt good. And it worked its way to the ending, and where you walked away going, that was really good. Like you fought with yourself for just a second, but then you're like, nah, it was good. I'm with TJ. As a matter of fact, I almost pre-ordered it last night when I got home.
So I was gonna say, and now it feels kind of bad following Jared. I was gonna say it was a good movie, not a great movie, which feels like the brothers here are potentially two sides of a separate coin. But no, I think it is a good movie. Listen, you can nitpick it all you want. The fact that this movie told a coherent story from start to finish, even if the pacing was jacked up, even if it didn't hit all the notes that you were hoping, I don't know how someone sits there and argues that this was an unspirited slog of a nostalgic cash grab. Same people that hated Afterlife are now saying, well, it's no Afterlife. Get off your high horse, a-hole. It was a very solid movie in terms of we started here. They explained everything. Honestly, even the butt pull of brass was something that they explained in the library. They intentionally went out of their way, and it kind of to their detriment at times, to let you know point blank, hey, everything we're saying is going to come back at some point. They set things up and things happen. They set up the fact that Phoebe's going to step in that machine. They set up all these facts that that's going to happen. They set things up, and those things are very clear. I don't know how anyone could say that this is lacking or dull. It may not be for you. You may not like Ghostbusters. You maybe not understand how Ghostbusters could be a franchise. Maybe you just can't get past the fact that 1984 Ghostbusters was perfection. Listen, I understand. Ghostbusters 1984, still the top of my list. But I think there's a really good argument to be had that maybe this is now second on the list of live-action movies for me from the Ghostbusters franchise. I think it and Afterlife could have a very strong discussion, and I think as a movie with what it was able to do, maybe not the story specifically, because I think Afterlife had a really good, touching story, but Afterlife's pace wasn't perfect either. I think it maybe edges out Afterlife a little bit in my ratings, so that's pretty dang good for me. But yeah, I think it was a good movie. I think. You know what? I'll say it too. Camille Nanjiani's, what was his name? Nadim Razmati. I thought he was one of the funniest aspects of this movie. I liked his addition. I wish we would have gave more time to him.
The way he was haggling for money, I don't think he needed any more time.
Good. I thought, I find it, you have to be planted to be as critical as some people are in this film. That's not to say that you can't be critical. I think we proved that you can be critical of this film.
Yeah.
But to be as harsh as some people have been in their assessment, IGN, stuff like that, about how this is spiritless. I don't get how you could be that off.
Well, they're just not happy people. I mean, they're just
That's it. They're not happy people.
Maybe they're ghosts like Melody looking for their unfinished business, and there's no Garaka to come and promise them goodies.
Somebody give those critics a match.
Oh, they're definitely not gods. They're definitely not gods. But hey, we're just three nerds that don't know anything. What did you think of the film? Let us know in the comments below. If you like the video. And if you want to join us nerds, please subscribe. If you want to see any more Ghostbusters content, hey, we won't stop ourselves from doing it. But we've been Rage You Nerds, and we'll be back on the next one. You go out there, you go watch that dang movie again, and you make up your own dang mind. Critics, Rotten Tomatoes, all that stuff's garbage. Only trust us. Bye!
Bye! We know what's good.
Yeah, we know.